Tyson,
Yo,
so great to have you again on the show and to see your face. And it's been a while since we talked. Probably what? I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
yeah, it's been a
When did
while.
that book come out? When did your first book come out?
That was 2019. It came out.
Well, I think I
Yeah,
talked to, so it's really 3 or 4 years ago that
yeah,
we talked.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, a lot of things are
Yeah.
changing, and now we're talking at this massive inflection point in history, like right now,
Yeah.
where we'll see the culmination of everything that's sort of happened over the last 4 years. It's
Talk
pretty
about that.
huge.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, as you know, time and place is the same word often in our Aboriginal languages here. So the place here, Bunurong country, coming up to time, we're soon getting some, you can see the little flowers starting to start on the tea trees.
All right, summer
Which
for you.
means soon I'll be able to buy lychees at the supermarket and cherries. And there'll be Jingle Bell Rock on in the speakers there at the supermarket. Oh, so that's all the seasonal stuff here. Bunurong country. We've got the ants are behaving well at the moment, and they're doing all their foraging. They're not going up high, so I don't think it's going to rain here. We might have a beautiful day. And so this isn't my country of origin. I mean, I do have ancestral connections down this way that are like a bit foggy in terms of detail. But yeah, my family is Yunkaporta's Western Cape York Wicca people. So I'm off country here on Bunurong country and being cared for by elders and people here who are watching out, make sure I don't say anything too terrible. And they'll let me know when I do. Yeah, which is good. We have checks and balances, in our community for that kind of thing. But even those have been disrupted since the last time I spoke to you.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah. Well, where do you start? So I guess we're in a bit of a post-truth world. Last time I spoke to you, it was, it was all right to just go with the woo. And, we were talking through the sort of ancient wisdom, the ancient wisdom woo that sort of came out through my first book, with a lot of, rhetoric sort of challenging, all mainstream kind of institutions and, public health, and contrasting that with natural health and spiritual health, measures and all that sort of thing. And we were already in a bit of a post-truth apocalypse kicking off there. Had been for, a few little years. And then COVID, bruz. Yeah. And all the crazy kicked off. A lot of your crunchy mums and, complementary medicine advocates and, even yoga people and bloody everything, they started nudging pretty weirdly towards fascism. And I think a lot of people didn't see that. That people who are like me, who were writing things like Sandtalk and, that we were only like a few clicks away, us and our audiences, from some pretty weird fascistic stuff, which is all coming to a head right now, my brother, while we're talking. We got a week out?
Oh, you're talking about here.
Yeah, there is no here and there. No, it's one big thing. So, what's going to happen next week, no matter which way it goes, is going to dramatically impact us here, as it always does,
True.
Yeah. So, all of your fascist movements and militias and, all the rest of weird stuff and, Christian theocratic kind of stuff, which is becoming increasingly larger, that has impacted us here. We get so on our Aboriginal murals and buildings and things here, we're regularly getting swastikas sprayed on these things, and
Really?
and slurs that were not that haven't been sort of really uttered publicly since the 80s or 90s. They're just openly being, so like I get, a few months back, I got booed off a stage in a really sort of, I don't know, an upscale Melbourne venue. I got booed off a stage with, a crowd that was shouting slurs like, effing, COON and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah, my
God.
little 7-year-old daughter's like coming up to me and saying, "Dad, what's a filthy abo?" Abos are really, that's our N word here. And,
Oh, yeah, right.
because that was being shouted at us when we're in the swimming pool, like, get out of the pool, you filthy abos. And then I got to try and explain that to her. It's pretty, it's a really messed up time here.
Here being everywhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's, now here, nowhere, kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, it's we got a big cultural feedback loop between here and in the US, and it just takes minutes now. So, so we get like, people, you remember when the Canadian truckers thing was happening? That was like, immediately, same day, like that's being spray painted on billboards all over the city, hold the line, Canada, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's pretty huge. But anyway, yeah, so my last book was like my sort of descent into madness. Over the COVID lockdowns, we had a pretty strict year, and it was a couple of years, and then ongoing sort of really strict limitations after that, so it was pretty full on.
I know they threw my favorite tennis player out.
Hey. Yeah, you never know. A lot of like our revered elders, turned overnight into, sovereign citizens and anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists as well. And, there was big disruptions in our communities. Yeah, it's been pretty full on over here. And in the middle of all that, I finally got diagnosed with, lifelong, like childhood onset bipolar affective disorder. So the extremes of my highs and lows, and lifetime of suicidal ideation and all the rest sort of started to make sense. So I've had like nearly a couple of years of treatment for that now, which has been pretty good. Plus ADHD, pretty wicked ADHD thrown into the mix.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Now, what about, I know over here, I mean, since we're talking about anxiety and depression and all of that, they have successfully used, various psychedelics to treat these conditions. I'm sure you're aware, but does that make any sense?
Kind of, but I'm a bit suspicious. Like, I'll do that stuff in a cultural context if it's in a highly structured ceremonial Indigenous context. That's for a purpose. Then that's, I don't know, if there's no sort of incursions there from the outside world that where money or influence would become a factor, then. And I know, and I've come into like really trusting deep relationships with the Indigenous people there, then I'll do that. But otherwise, I'm a bit leery. Hey, a bit leery of that. Sorry, that was a pun on your good brother from back in the day.
Yes. Yeah. But at the same time, maybe can you relate what role does indigenous plants that have consciousness altering properties play in your world, in your world with
Well, they all
your
do.
yeah.
Yeah, all the plants do. You know, as you're walking, you know, with your close community and or a foraging group, or you know, etc. You know, as you're walking in the land, all of the plants are doing this. Even sitting in a Zoom meeting, those plants are acting on me. You know, you are always like connected with them. There's signal always. You know, that goes out to all of us. You know, those flowers, etc., the smells, these are signaling the bees, the ants, birds, you know, and changing their behavior, which is signaling other things, and it all just cascades through. And so you're always sort of, a good part of you is running in that state anyway, you know, of connectedness and expansive consciousness, that distributed cognition I think we talked about last time, you know, where your neural processes are extending out into the landscape around you. I think when people who don't live like that, you know, in their mind, body, and environment, when they like take psychedelics or plant teacher sort of medicines, they experience that for the first time, so it hits them really hard, you know. But most of the Indigenous people I know who use these things in ceremony, it's not that, you know, like you see them like taking massive quantities over like 12 hours and just being quite lucid and, you know, dancing and sharing what's going on, and doing ceremony like that at the same time. So it's I don't know, it's it's a consciousness that's pre-existing kind of thing. I think it just, I don't know, it allows people, it gives people the, you know, the opportunity to just focus on spirit, you know, for a number of hours together. And, you know, so that's what that's for. But there's lots of other ones, like sort of like I was for many years working with what's classified as a narcotic pitchery. Pitchery here, it's listed as a poison and a narcotic. It's a native plant, but apologies. Yeah, pitchery, it's, you know, that really just gives you this sort of razor focus. You sort of see, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Sort of almost feels like you're going cross-eyed, and your legs are wobbly, but you can walk all day without stopping. And
Wow.
And you have more of a razor focus. It's like you're cutting out a lot of the noise of like all these signals coming in all around you. It kind of does the opposite thing of expanding the consciousness. It takes it down to a razor point, which I quite like. I used to like that. It was useful for my work. Yeah, there's lots of native tobaccos. There's a lot of acacias, which I know you're aware of all that DMT and everything. But there are acacias, you know, that do other things. Marupo used to use that a lot. At that one, you just burn the leaves down to the ash and you mix it with the tobacco, you know, and you eat that. But you don't mix it with the pitchery. If you do that, you're in deep trouble. There's other things. So a lot of people have sort of discovered a particular plant, and I won't say what it is because there's already trouble with it in New South Wales on Gamilaroi country, and that's a psychedelic that's only used for funeral ceremonies.
Really?
And and there are a lot of non-Aboriginal people harvesting that and processing it and using it for like recreational or, you know, soul searching, healing, whatever work. Now it's not for that.
What is it for? What is it directed at in terms of grief?
Yeah, it assists with the grieving process. So grieving, like in ceremony, we have certain rhythms and frequency pitches, like in a death wail, for example. Like there's that, when it's collective and there's like 100 people all doing it at once, that and certain rhythms of the clapping and dances that come with that, and the structure of, the different processions that occur for different kin groups, throughout the ceremony. All this, it sort of builds to create this altered state. And Camilla Roy, fellow, my friend who's, been telling me about this, that's they sort of enhance that with this particular plant, so it does help with the grieving process and with grief in general, but then, also it allows you to access that sort of world of spirit that you're in, but where you also have to be very protective. There's a lot of protocols to make sure that, that the shadow spirit of the deceased one isn't being entertained or isn't being
held down, right?
Attracted to it. Yeah, you've got to have those boundaries and be able to be vigilant for those things. Yeah. Because those first funeral ceremonies, they're the ones that send other parts of spirit that go, to sky camp, in the stars, or go west, or go, you know what I mean? Go back to that ancestral spirit, going back to the place in the land that it's from, all these things. But that shadow's no good. That's just the accumulated sort of ego stuff of a person's lifetime. And that lingers for a bit, like up to a year afterwards. So there's a lot of ceremonies that have to happen over a year. Yeah, wow. To send that one back.
Wow. I'm attuned to the Buddhist thing. The Tibetans particularly have a great worldview around these things. I've been studying them forever. What do? 49 days, they don't do anything. The body gets taken care of, and depending on some circumstances, like if it's a high being, then sometimes the body doesn't even decay.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. Yeah.
That's huge.
You know what? So wait, Tyson, we started this conversation. It's a little bit of a, shall we say, dark way. Yeah. The world is being overtaken by solitary dictators, and fascism is certainly on the rise everywhere. And so we are. And
there's a bright side, though.
You tell me. I was going to pull something from the book.
No, you go on. Yeah, you do that, and then I guess I just want to flag that. No, we'll cycle back to the bright side stuff. That because we don't want to depress people. Yeah. Well,
anyhow, I just found this, and you can include whatever you were thinking just now, but we have plenty in common that we can build on to strengthen our relationship here as we journey through a suite of pathologies that need some attention before we destroy the world with our dysfunction. Okay, that's succinct. Even if you don't have the same disorders as me, you probably belong to a culture that does, unless, of course, you're from a healthy culture. And in which case, your land has almost certainly been invaded by an unhealthy one that will break you soon anyway. That's a little parenthesis.
That's
so either way, we both need to work on our issues, because no trees burn alone. So
no tree burns alone.
This is what Ram Dass is all about. This is what we try and do to further that legacy. We are all walking each other home. It was one of his central sayings. So, go ahead with what you were thinking.
Or walking each other home. Yep. And no tree burns alone. There we go. Put that on a bridge magnet. Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking like there's just been this striving for so long towards, trying to make a great change in consciousness, like a global shift in consciousness happen, and move into a new age. This has been, Ram Dass was striving towards that, all that generation and coming right through. And arguably, it was happening in 1920s, 1930s, Europe, particularly Germany, and arguably long before that, like in the parlors of the wealthy in the Victorian age, it's all of these things, those early writings that so much influenced the social imaginaries and spiritual imaginaries, like of the whole northern hemisphere, and then all the world as the age of discovery happened, etc. So this has been around for a long time, this striving, and it has finally happened. But
How
I mean,
so?
no one's been able to figure out how to do it. But the same people that I was complaining about a minute ago, they actually achieved it.
How?
You're okay. So you're fascistic, misogynistic, bigoted, white supremacist, whatever you want to call them, like, all of that. The contrarian, what used to be libertarian, anti-establishment, etc. All of these people, there's no leader. They had like a leaderless revolution in consciousness, where they created new social imaginaries and spiritual imaginaries. And the spirit's important because that was the secret source. Everybody who tries to make political movements or anything else, there's so much secularism, but these guys deployed, no, this is a war in heaven and earth. This is angels and demons. This is good and evil, that the spiritual element was running all the way through. It's like we are fighting the globalists, the Satanists, there was a big spiritual messaging. And so that spread rapidly, and it had a very big front door. It went all the way through a lot of New Age communities, and people who just wanted to eat raw foods and live right and have healthy kids were swept up in it too. The intentional communities of all stripes, suddenly turned into nativists and weirdos. Lots of conspiracies. Everybody, even here, like all these people jumping on board right behind RFK.
Yeah.
There who'll probably be the new head of the new ministry of Make America healthy again. Yeah. The Maha mob. Anyway, so all of that happened, and they did it. They actually showed us the way that we can do it, rather how we can actually make a global awakening, a global shift in consciousness happen, because they did it, but they just had wrong story.
That's something. Yeah. We haven't even said a word. Wait, you can't go further. I never said a word about your new book. Right Story, Wrong Story is the title of the book, How to Have Fearless Conversations in Hell, which we're doing kind of right now, actually. Right? One of the other things.
That's it.
Yeah. One of the other things is, I think, and you spoke to really a movement without a leader. I mean, I love that because it's so real. And then in the New Age yoga area, which is the area that we are in, meaning what we do, what Ram Dass represented, this is you. So this is not me. This is you. Personal development is a combination of the stupidest parts of science and the stupidest parts of spirituality. And I think it has hastened the death of the planet over the last century. Okay, that's Tyson, okay? Not me, although I believe every word of it.
That's Tyson, like in a book where he's trying to point out that inflammatory, like rhetoric is evil. Yeah. Doing a bit of inflammatory rhetoric. Yeah,
himself. I love it.
Yeah. Just like, oh man. See, I think that it's a really good example right there. You know, so what I've done is I've taken one thing, one pattern, and then generalized it right out, like
Yeah.
way beyond its context, like as
Mm-hmm.
being the reason for everything that's wrong.
Yeah, right.
So right there, I'm doing the thing that I'm like trying to grapple with in the book as being, no, that's the wrong thing. That's how they've been able to scale all this. So you've got, like, you know, there are no leaders, and there are a few cells, and yeah, there's billionaire dark money going in from Thiel and Musk and people like this, and you know, Steve Bannon. You got all those operatives just kind of herding the cats a bit, but in general, it's leaderless, and everybody's using their imagination to keep adding to this story. Keep adding to this story until it's this all-encompassing new social imaginary that just and that's the thing that can shift the world. You know, a collective, you know, imagining of story of,
Well, you're right. It has.
of a grand narrative. Yeah, and it really has shifted everything. And you know, it doesn't even have to come out on top or dominate, but it has just completely shifted the landscape of everybody's thinking everywhere. You know, so what I take away from that now is hope that, oh yeah, that is possible. Yeah, we could do that. You know. But yeah, getting back to the sort of yoga community sort of stuff, it was you ended up with, you know, a lot of you know, lifestyle, alternative health, you know, spiritual, personal development kind of, you know. My friend keeps telling me I'm not allowed to use the word guru because, like, he's like, no, that's my word. You can't say that guru's a real thing. It's like, I got a friend who keeps telling me I can't use the word guru because it's
Why?
Because it's an actual thing that is a sacred thing, and to, you know, talk about small g gurus or secular gurus is like, you know, it's like, no, use another word.
I see. Yeah.
Use another word. So anyway, lots of influences. Yeah, it was just quite shocking how much of a small nudge away it was for a lot of those communities, you know, to step into the, you know, to be marching alongside white supremacists very quickly, you know, and, you know, running drum circles and yoga sessions at the Canadian truckers blockade and all the rest, you know. I think it was a shock for a lot of us, you know, sort of always just assumed that this is, you know, peaceful lefties, you know, how quickly, like, a lot of groups switched to that. Anyway, there's really good, yeah, like, I won't go into all the mechanics of that, but there's some pretty good research around it. But I'm keeping myself, I don't know, straight and honest on inquiring into that. Part of a big research team that's international, and, you know, some of our leading researchers in that are, you know, yoga masters and yoga practitioners, you know, who are, I don't know, putting a bit of a firewall there between, no, that's not what yoga's all about. It's about this. Right. You know, that's just
but that's been going on.
Yeah.
That's been going on forever too. I mean, you know, I was in India a long time ago, and I met, you know, with Ram Dass, the real deal. Never mind all what name you can put to it, because you couldn't.
Yeah.
And we experienced all sorts of spiritual tourism going on all around us, all the time, all through these decades, all of it. But you know what? Here's something from this is more. We're going to move towards the light here, and it's. I couldn't be more connected to you around this. Okay, and it's. You say you belong to a culture. You say I belong to a culture where everyone's taken care of, and nobody is above anyone else. I'm quite comfortable with my shortcomings and my limited cultural role. I know that no matter what, This is just what it's all about for me.
Mm.
I will be loved and respected and cared for, and this certainty allows me to meet all my obligations, exceed my limits, etc. And this relation that you're speaking to, unfortunately, us in the West or white people have lost that over time. And, so that's why, like me back in decades ago in India and in America or Canada, I'm from Canada, same kind of thing. I looked, where can I find the essence of what we really truly are? I feel that when I'm around people, in a situation where I'm not coming from my wrong story, right? Good way to put that. And here you say, you're talking really about love. And there are plenty of people who would look around for the people that would share that space with you, is what you're saying, I believe. You are cared for, potentially. So come find us caring people. And you go, hot tip, the best way to do that is start to be a caring person.
Oh wow!
Yes, you said that.
Did I just do find the others? I think I might have.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is extremely important for us to all remember, and that we share that connected place. And that's, you point to it all through the last book and this book. You're from a culture that it hasn't lost connection with connection. Right?
Yeah. But all things can be eroded and undermined. Like as you said before, you're having sublime deep experience of connection in India, and yet all around you there's cultural tourism, spiritual tourism happening in the most profane ways. Just all around you, And these things do they do add up after a while. After a time, those things can reach a saturation point that really does affect your culture and your community. It's important though to like retrieve forward, what was working and maintain a hope and a dream of those things. Yeah.
And start with being a caring person, and then you will connect with other caring people. And that starts the movement that you're talking about. The movement has been it's very dark right now. But that enables, Ram Dass's thing was, work on yourself, become a whole person, and radiate that to whoever you happen to meet.
Yeah.
And that's where this starts. The Dalai Lama says over and over and over, it's about compassion. I am who I am because of how my mother brought me up. The kind of compassion she instilled. If more and more mothers instill that in their children, we will see in generations to come a change can happen. And that's, to me, a similar thing to what we're speaking to in terms of just be kind and caring to somebody. You'll find that's a pickpocket only sees pockets, basically, is a famous saying in India. So yeah, when we generate that, then we start to generate something that becomes larger than our own individual story.
Hey, that's true. It's always got to be larger than individual story. And I don't know if you have an individual story and that's a focus, this is a problem too. This sort of crisis of subjectivity when we kind of elevate,
Yeah.
It's weird because, our lived experience is really important. My lived experience is important in how I interact with institutions. And it's important that they understand that to some degree, so that I can feel safe in those places. But then at the same time, if I dismiss everything else, if I dismiss all empirical reality and the aggregate of everybody else's stories, and I elevate my lived experience as that's all I need to know, and that all my decisions can be made instinctively from that, and then I can defend that to the death, every single decision, and seek to impose it on everybody else. Everybody should be doing this. This is the this is the kind of mechanism I talk about a bit in Right Story, Wrong Story, that religions and spiritual movements sort of prime people for those kind of logics. Inevitably you create people who are like you because you're seeking the others like you. You create groups where there's an in-group, and so therefore that's defined by outsiders as well. And you know what I mean? And there's always stories and justifications for exclusion and for, then hatred rising right alongside, the pure love that actually brought you together in the first place. I think it's a trap to look out for, and a pattern. Yeah. How can you have profound collective experiences of spirit without that becoming, an exclusionary, dominionist, cult?
Right.
Yeah.
There was a great Tibetan Lama named Trungpa Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who wrote a book called Spiritual Materialism, which exactly addresses what we are speaking to right now. I mean, it's amazing. If you don't have it, you should take a look at it. I mean, and he translated, the more esoteric configurations into plain old English, so that we could get it. Yeah. It's really great. And,
I did spend a week in a Buddhist community.
Oh, where?
Yeah, earlier in the year.
Australia? Yeah.
No, in Uganda.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really big. Like it's you're either Christian or Muslim there, and everybody's sort of angry with everyone else. But then there's just this little sort of neighborhood right in the middle of all that on a hill, like this Uganda Buddhist center. I did spend a week there with my good mate Bante. He's the kind of, the spiritual leader of that place.
What's his name, full name?
Bante, can't remember the rest of his name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no.
I
know a couple of Bantes, that's why.
All right, okay. I could probably look that up in email.
But I couldn't remember the last name either. Yeah. Anyhow, did you get something from that?
Yeah, I really did. I also behaved badly a couple of times. Like, when you do that, like you go into someone else's place and, trying to come into that spirit, and it's all about everybody. But then, like a couple of times you end up making it all about you. Yeah, that happens. That happens. Yeah, everybody does it. Yeah.
Oh, talk about, the name of the book is Right Story, Wrong Story. Okay, what are we talking here? I have my own obvious relationship with Wrong Story, a big one.
Yeah.
Okay, but you talk about the Right Story.
I would like to hear about that. Well, it's not about it's not about the truth. Like, it's not about being factually correct. You know what I mean? It's just about the process through which it comes about, and the intention of the intent of that process. So Right Story is formed, over quite a long period of time and fairly slowly, by groups of people, large groups of people who are, in these efforts of sort of long-term collaborative imagination. They interpret the signals from the world, and from spirit, from the land around them, from all of their kin, human and non-human, and over time build a right story, that perfectly describes, the systems they live in, and then the way those systems interact with other systems further afield, and that could be a myth or, almost anything. But, those stories emerge, and then people are able to coalesce around those. And, then those social imaginaries that can make, really big phase shifts or stabilize things across, large areas, and just, make things quite utopian. They emerge from that. So that's how the right story happens, which is how we do our law, LORE law here, over deep time. And these could be, and they don't have to be pleasant stories. They can be cautionary tales, as well, about people who did the wrong thing and the cataclysms that followed. Anyway, but then wrong story is a bit different. That's a bit like that kicks off from, gossip and false witness, in our communities like that. And they spread like wildfire. They burn real bright, for a short time, and they make a lot of mess and destroy a lot of things. And then they're done, and they just leave destruction in their wake, And so really, if you're looking at a post-truth world and massive disinformation landscapes, political violence, public violence, stochastic terrorism, dark money, dark influence, all sort of, moving everybody, no matter what their brand, towards an end of, we got to deregulate. We got to take down all these regulating institutions, and billionaires shouldn't have to pay taxes. It all sort of ends up there, although that's not the main messaging, So all that wrong story there of, that's usually gossip and, big leaps of logic, finding a correlation between two things, and then just building a whole conspiracy out of it or whatever like this, and those things spread like wildfire. That's your wrong story. And I just think it's just, since I wrote the book, that process is hyper accelerated,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, particularly in the build up to your election there, it's been pretty full on, dare I mention, the whole they're eating the cats and dogs thing, And I think your politicians there, they really captured wrong story and even right story really well. The nature of it, it doesn't have to be true. It just has to be truthy. So when they're caught out in the lie of the Haitians are eating cats and dogs thing, they just, it was just I'm gonna keep saying it, and I'm gonna keep posting it. I know it's not true, but it reflects a truth of an emotion that we are all feeling. We being, the group with the grievance. This is a real signal. People are really suffering, and this feels true. This story reflects our feelings, of terror and the need to preserve our cultures and communities and resources exclusively. So so that they just, like Vance, for example, he said, he knows it's not true, factually true, but that doesn't matter. It captures the spirit and the heart of the of what binds us together, in this cause. And so, all the fact checking in the world has not stopped that story, because story, right story or wrong story doesn't have to be true. It just has to capture the essence of a system of signals and flows of spirit and knowledge and information that binds us all together.
I look at myself and I look at my wrong story.
Yeah.
Full of projections.
Oh.
Right? Full of likes and dislikes that are moving me in one direction away, or the other, rather. Full of reactivity based
Yeah.
on personal preference. I see all of these things, and to me, I'm just a microcosm, and I may be a little bit more aware of how my wrong story is moving along, because I know what the right story is, and that right story is what we discussed a little earlier on around connectivity with each other, around sharing love, kindness, caring, compassion. When someone asks me, "Oh, are you, what about enlightenment? You've been doing this shit for a long time, practices and meditating, all that." I said, I never think about that. I only think of, which is what we got, what our legacy is, which is about what's so great about what good you can find for yourself. What's so great about it? Ram Dass put it well in this film that we did. Hey, when is enough enough? When is what I want enough? What I need enough? It's a little bit more interesting when you start to care for other people. And that's enlightenment. That evolvement is enlightenment. That evolvement, where that starts to, it's the whole ground is that, or is, and Ram Dass did achieve that by the end of his life to some degree. I mean, to a great degree, really, to a great degree. So I like to think that, we can become aware of our quote unquote wrong story, even collectively. And we can go back to what we would call, Buddhist true nature.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to work from, I think.
I mean, I think everybody wants to do that. Everybody would like to have nothing, and for that not to be a problem. The problem is that you die then in this world, this civilization that we've made. Unless you have mountains of privilege whereby you can be a person who doesn't wear shoes, doesn't own anything. And,
wait, what does that have to do with anything at all? Having or not having?
It's really important. This is my struggle, because you could, so what happens to somebody who has nothing and can just sort of sit and just have, just enough to eat and, and just kind of live with the minimal requirements of life, who are those people? Well, those people are like homeless people, and they get killed all the time here, people who have nothing in this city, they die or they live such horrendous lives of misery and harassment and violence perpetrated on them. You know what I mean? But to be able to be a person who can do that, who can actually, sit with no shoes, only own 2 shirts, and that's everything you've got, to be able to do that and maintain health, and to know that you could just curl up and go to sleep on your bed nap and no one's going to kill you while you're sleeping. You can reach that state of, this is perfection. This is enlightenment. But most of us have to live in and under systems that will destroy us if we're not constantly working just to maintain the absolute minimum of resources and etc. that are required to meet, send your kids to school or you will lose your kids. The amount of resources you need to be able to, have kids presenting in the way they need to present for school without authorities being alerted and having your kids taken away, and then getting them there every day like that. That's that's a demand. I would love to just frickin' drop everything and go.
No,
sit on
but
the
that's
beach.
not
All
the
I need,
point.
I wouldn't need anything. I can make my own spears. I do whatever I want. I could live really easily off the land.
I know, but you didn't. You created a family. So
I
that's
did.
part of your story. You
I
didn't,
did.
and now, we have the choice, you and me. I have family and all as well, and have had to go through. The world is the world, and we need to relate with it because we are
Yeah.
in it. But to
It
relate
is.
from it from reactivity, anger, And
Yeah.
all of that stuff is a choice you don't have to make.
And it's based on a wrong story too.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, so it's just really cool you're talking about in a wrong story too. So that made me go, whoa. And I'm thinking about this morning, and I dropped the kids off to school just before I come in to see you, and I was chewing a bit of gum, and there was a moment where I went to spit it out on the road outside my kids' school. And I went, whoa, you can't do that. And then all of this massive wrong story flicks through my head. Stuff these people, this civilization here, they come and plop this city right on top of Aboriginal land. They've completely destroyed everything. There are no wombats here anymore. There's nothing here. I can't see or hear the lyrebirds because there aren't any. I can't eat the cores of the ferns because there are no ferns. Everything's gone. Everything's wrecked, and I can't spit a bit of freaking chewing gum out. They burnt everything and built this on top of it. Stuffed their city, stuffed their civilization. I would like to just burn it all or see it fall in my lifetime. Man, all that, which was a lot of the wrong story of my first book. All that flicks through my head in one moment where I like almost just go and spit that gum out on the road where all these kids are going to be walking, Yeah, but then your right story of connection and love and, a sort of collective care for each other that came in, and so I didn't spit that out.
Okay. I love it. Here's something else that's in the book that I had to mention. We're pretty much near the end of the podcast. And there's a lot of, in the work that we do, if, we talk about what Ram Dass's, in this case, what Ram Dass's purview is around psychedelics and doing it, you would say, in a ceremonial way or in a very prescribed way that's not abusive to honoring the plant and so on. And he very much espoused that. So, that's part. But then we try and weave in. We did this at this MAPS convention last summer. And there was an indigenous man from, I believe, from South America, Mexico, something. It was beautiful, and everything he had to say was so exactly right on that people needed to hear. But there's a lot of appropriation going on, right? And that is something that we all need to think about and address. And I like what you say here, Tyson. There is nothing spiritual or religious about indigenous knowledge, which is just a peer-driven process of coming to understand all your relations, human and non-human, within creation. But how can we define this process without grounding the description in opposition to spirituality, science, or religion? All stories are welcome around our fires, even those that define us as pagan, heathen, and other. In the end, our knowledge is human knowledge, accountable to community, ancestors, descendants, and the eternal law of the land. I love that. I think that's a great response to this whole appropriation question as well. It really is.
Yeah, my words are better when I have a minute to think about it. Oh, look, I just think like the answer to the appropriation side, because people need this connection. It's like, well, where can I get it? It's gone, and so I don't blame people for picking things up, because they have to, but also they don't have to. Like, look at the process of the peoples you're approaching. You don't have to take the sage stick, You can look at the processes that are going on, and the processes that we have interacting with different groups as Indigenous people, and even with outsider groups. There's a process of empathy, You know, there are embassy protocols, and we make relations, we make kin, you know, through exchange. Those things happen, and it's not just human kin, but non-human kin. So that I referred to when I went to Africa, you know, like, and I just talked about the silly things that I did, but also a good thing that we did there was start to make an embassy through the eucalyptus trees, the gum trees that were planted there to drain all the swamps. So they're from Australia. They're our trees. And the locals there were saying, can you please take your tree spirits with you? They're tormenting us. Like, so every gum tree that's died in that place, its spirit is still whizzing around. It's got nowhere to go. So we're able to put together a ceremony, a series of ceremonies over time to bring all those tree spirits back home from Africa, which is pretty good. And that makes good embassy with people of a lot of cultures working together, because now that's elsewhere, because those gum trees are everywhere in the world. There's heaps in Portugal. I'm working with two different peoples from Ecuador at the moment in an embassy because they had a different approach than the Africans did of, like, get rid of these tree spirits. They actually brought them into their system, and they embedded the gum trees into not only their ecosystem so that it wouldn't cause disruptions to the biodiversity, but they also brought it into their ceremonies and started working with it as medicine and finding the medicinal properties of that. And so it's an important part of their culture now over the last century, those Australian gum trees. But we have never done embassy together around that. So we're working on that embassy right now and finding processes through that of how you bring the outside other in, and how you bring them into balance with the system that you have, and you allow them to transform the system at the same time as allowing your system to transform them as this kind of, you know, this collective sort of balanced dialogue, multi-log. It's, I don't know, it's pretty exciting. Wow, you know, I think if we're all engaged in that, nobody would feel like they had to take anything, because we'd all just be in it. Yeah.
That's
anyway,
the prayer for
that
today. That is it, right?
That's it.
God. Thanks so much, Tyson. I always love
Thank
hanging
you,
with you. I wish we could do it more often. It's refreshing.
Well, you're the first I've had time to hang with in a couple of months right now. But I was definitely not going to say no.
Thank you.
I had to do the catch up. Yeah, I love your work, brother.
Thank you. I love yours. Everybody, we'll link it all up, and I don't know when when the book's coming out here in the U.S. of A.
I think it's February.
February? No.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I don't know when. Look, they don't tell me anything.
They don't. It's okay. I'm
recording the audio.
You're right. You're
next
right.
Week.
It's at the beginning of the year.
I know.
But you know what, people? We're going to put a link in so you can pre-order it. I'm sure Harper One is publishing the next Ram Dass book, which is a posthumous book. You know what it's called? There Is No Other.
Nice.
Isn't that nice?
Nice. Yeah. I think we're lining up on something here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All these circles. Yeah.
So go to BeHereNowNetwork.com/mindrolling. You'll see all the show notes and the connectivity to Tyson's other book and this book to pre-order, and Tyson online, and please connect up and check everything else out on the network, all the wonderful podcasters that we have. And we shall see you next week. Thanks, Tyson.
Yo, see ya.